According to the most recent war games held by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Washington has already lost the war for Taiwan. In the first few days of the war, the think tank's simulation of a battle between the United States and China resulted in the sinking of numerous American carrier strike groups, the destruction of hundreds of American combat aircraft, and the deaths of thousands of American military people. In this video, we will talk about USA Navy's plan to defeat China in war. So before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel. These games, set in 2026 and created before the most recent Taiwan crisis, contribute to decades of research on the Taiwan situation done at military schools and think tanks on both sides of the Pacific. The exercises, which are expected to be written up later this year, have confirmed at least one widely accepted theory. If the United States attempts to fight the struggle for Taiwan using mostly armed troops positioned west of Guam, U.S. casualties will be significant. The People's Liberation Army might be impassed by the United States and its allies, but the price might be too great for American culture to bear. And if China's authorities hold this view even erroneously, deterrence will fail, increasing the likelihood of war. Commanders of the United States must use the forces and equipment that politicians give them to fight in the Indo-Pacific. Like earlier war games, recent ones show that the U.S. needs a superior strategy to repel an attack on Taiwan. This calls for the use of troops and ideas that balance American competitive advantages against Chinese vulnerabilities while reducing the number of American forces that American commanders must station within firing range of Chinese weapons. Fortunately, there is a more advantageous scenario that pits American bombers against China's Navy and other marine forces. If China's maritime might is destroyed, it cannot annex Taiwan, the Senkaku Islands, or any other territories in the area. If American officials and military planners start giving the U.S. bomber force the priority it deserves, it might pose a grave danger to China's maritime dominance. Washington would be in a good position to succeed in a counter-maritime operation in the Western Pacific if it made China's maritime capabilities the primary target of its bomber force and equipped it properly. American sand and soldiers who are stationed inside of China's missile range represent a significant political commitment to the country's vulnerable partners in the area. At the same time, the purchase of short-range tactical aircraft has received overwhelming support from American authorities. Currently, there are 15.8 fighters for every bomber in the U.S. Air Force, and all of the Navy's and Marine Corps' attack aircraft are short-range. A stand-in force is therefore one of the limited options accessible to commanders tasked with thwarting or repelling a potential Chinese assault. A long-range sensor missile warfare network that is embedded into China's counter-intervention force structure is intended to entice and eliminate prominent U.S. troops like aircraft carrier strike groups. The lethality of Beijing's retaliation would increase if the United States implemented a plan that crammed ever more vulnerable military assets into the Chinese Army's 3,000-kilometer missile engagement zone. American military planners have researched methods to sabotage China's kill chain that targets American forces. To enable its long-range sensor missile warfare network, China is deploying new constellations of imaging and communications satellites that are distributed, resilient, and redundant, just like the United States. These new constellations will make it incredibly challenging for both sides to break the death chain, because each one is made up of dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of small, networked satellites. The Chinese Air Force and Navy operate more than 200 bombers and nearly 1,400 fighter attack aircraft, according to the annual military balance database from the International Institute of Strategic Studies. These forces have doubled over the past 10 years and are still expanding. The Chinese Air Force could launch about 1,400 precision land attack and anti-ship missile shots per day, with several hundred of them having the ability to reach fixed bases and surface warships as far away as Guam in this second island chain. Given this missile capability, it is not surprising that several iterations of the war game conducted by the Center for Strategic and International Studies anticipated the annihilation of 2 American aircraft carriers and their carrier air wings. Another version resulted in the destruction of 900 American aircraft, the majority of which crashed to the ground after missiles hit the few hub and dispersion facilities that were accessible to American and Allied forces in the Western Pacific. In a different war game, the remaining American warships and aircraft carriers were seen escaping to the east at flank speed to escape being sunk. However, this strategy is unlikely to instill much courage in the troops left behind to contend with China's daily saturation missile bombardments. The outcomes displayed in these war games are not unique. Tens of thousands of American losses sustained over a short period of time, according to Chinese planners, should lead to political failure and demoralization. These strategists may be onto something with predicted casualties orders of magnitude larger than Pearl Harbor or 9/11. U.S. policymakers do not need to accept this risk, even if they are not. Washington should use its long-range striking capability rather than placing a sizable number of stand-in forces within range of Chinese missiles. Even with only 141 aircraft, the U.S. bomber force is a strong match for the Chinese Navy and China's overall maritime capability. By 2030, China's marine force is expected to consist of approximately 800 warships, huge maritime militia ships, and borderline military Coast Guard cutters, according to the U.S. Office of Naval Intelligence. The Chinese maritime force for an invasion of Taiwan would probably consist of about 1,000 surface ships with the addition of huge commercial cargo ships. To counter this, American bombers would operate from a number of locations that are mainly beyond the Chinese military's range, supported by the Air Force's sizable and dispersed airborne tanker force. The United States might avoid exposing the majority of its stand-in forces, including as aircraft carriers, short-range attack aircraft, and ground soldiers, to the firepower of the Chinese military by waging a bomber-led assault against China's coastal assets. Long-range weapons would be used at the outset of the bomber force's attacks to lessen the risk to the aircraft itself. For instance, the bomber force could strike fixed and moving marine targets with nearly 800 long-range missiles per day if roughly one-third of its aircraft were flown each day, at least until the bombers used up all of these pricey and unique weapons. The counter-maritime role of the bombers might be supported by new imaging and communications satellite constellations run by both the U.S. Space Force and commercial sector entities. It would be too risky for the non-stealthy B-52H and B-1B bombers to continue the counter-maritime operation west of the First Island chain after the whole inventory of standoff missiles has been used up. However, American stealth bombers may keep using closer-range weapons. In 2026, how many stealth bombers will the Air Force possess? There are 20 B-2s in total, 16 of which may be combat-coded. The brand-new B-21 Raider is another. Listeners were shocked earlier this year when Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall announced that Northrop Grumman was actually assembling 5 B-21s, not just 2 prototypes as was previously believed. And by the middle of the 2030s, the Air Force intends to purchase at least 100 B-21s. By 2026, the U.S. military will have built at least 10 or 15 B-21s. An open-source analysis predicted that 20 B-21s would be available by 2027. The Air Force may plausibly expect a tempo of 10 stealth bomber missions per day against China in 2026 between the B-2 force and a few B-21s. According to one estimate, that might result in over 300 precise weapon attacks weighing 1,000 pounds or more each day against Chinese marine targets, each of which would have the same warhead weight as an LRASM. According to current budget projections, the U.S. Air Force will have 149 long-range anti-ship missiles and around 7,000 combined air-to-surface standoff missiles available in 2026. The whole inventory of these long-range missiles would be depleted in less than 10 days if 800 missiles were launched every day. Even after precisely launching 1,000-pound nukes at Chinese forces that many times, that would place the U.S. in a precarious position. Also being acquired by the Air Force is the small-diameter bomb Q, also known as the Stormbreaker. This is a small, lightweight munition made to accurately strike moving targets up to 40 miles away, day or night, in any condition, and to thwart enemy defenses. By 2026, the service hopes to have 623 of these weapons prepared. These munitions could be enhanced by adding precision attack sensors to regular 2,000-pound bombs, as shown by the Air Force Research Lab's QuickSync testing. A new affordable mid-range munition has been developed by Mark Gunzinger of the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies. It would enable the Air Force's stealthy bombers to attack targets at a safe distance from air defenses and be inexpensive enough for the service to quickly and widely procure. Gunzinger's proposal, which relied on tried-and-true components, could defeat the Chinese Navy for 10 days. The stealthy B-2A and B-21 bombers' competitive advantages would be maximized by this munition. China's ability to conquer the Western Pacific would be eliminated if its marine might was destroyed. Despite being exposed to American bombers, the Chinese Navy is not a priority for the Air Force. The lack of American anti-ship ammunition is a squandered opportunity that will cost dearly, as Taiwan-focused war games demonstrate. This is it for today's video. Share your opinions with us in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and click that bell icon for further updates.